I've been caught, but I'm keeping on check. And I've been taught, but I'm keeping on check. And I've been broken.
Good afternoon, good evening. This is Dov Tasman. You're back on Equal Footing. It's been a bit of a tradition lately to be out of studio, and tonight again, I'm calling in from South America, from Cartagena, Colombia. Beautiful town here. We've done a few shows from, so please forgive us tonight if the audio quality isn't perfect. We're also going to be only taking text and WhatsApp questions and comments tonight. We're not going to be taking live callers just to ensure that we have a fluid show. So I'm going to start by giving out the number to participate in tonight's show on dream analysis. Have you wondered whether your dreams are, as modern psychoanalysis seems to imply, just a reflection of your inner desires and anxieties, stuff that you should go talk to your therapist about? Or are your dreams, as our Jewish tradition seems to say, if not clearly, certainly implies, are prophetic? They're kind of our connection to God in a certain way. They're infused with the sacred. Maybe not all of them, but many of them. We're going to talk about dream analysis, dream interpretation tonight from the sometimes dueling perspectives of Jewish theology and modern psychoanalysis. There's some crossover belief there too, though, you might be surprised about. We've got great guests to cover this topic tonight. I promise the number. Here it is. 917-428-4062. Do not call that number. That's just for texting in or WhatsApping in a question or comment on this topic of dream interpretation. 917-428-4062. And next week we'll be back with our regular live callers as well. We are live on the air, so if you text or WhatsApp in a question or comment, we will get it during the program. So, talking about dreams tonight, I'm going to introduce our guests. I'm going to then set up a little bit of the history here so we can get to the kind of crux of the matter, the different perspectives on the importance of dreams psychologically, spiritually. We're joined tonight by a psychoanalyst and dream interpreter. She's an expert subject, and Dr. Ann Cutler. Hopefully we've got her on the line now. Dr. Cutler in private practice as a psychoanalyst since 1991 in New York. Her practice includes individuals and couples, even groups. She works with her patients to uncover hidden conflicts to allow for greater freedom of choice in their lives and positive change. She works with both adults and adolescents. She specializes in depression, anxiety, and relationship issues. Dr. Cutler trained in psychoanalysis at the National Psychological Association for Psychoanalysis, NPAP, in New York City, and she received her doctorate from the Boston Graduate School of Psychoanalysis a couple of years ago. She received her BA in psychology from Yale. I went to Harvard. I forgive you, Dr. Cutler. Actually, that's a whole topic for a different show. Harvard is not doing well with our audience in this program lately. Dr. Cutler earned her MBA, I think this is interesting, in marketing and finance as well from Columbia. And she's worked for many years in the publishing industry as well and as a management consultant. That was while building her psychotherapy practice. Dr. Cutler, welcome to Equal Footing for the first time.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
You are joined by a veteran, someone who's been on the program before a couple of times, sought after for his wisdom in the Jewish world. I love, and generally, I shouldn't say just the Jewish world, I love that our guest, Rabbi Pinchas Taylor, is able to straddle what I would call traditional halacha Jewish law, and also the mystical side, some of the lost traditions. We've talked before with him about kind of the relationship between Jewish theology and aliens. Yes, we've even done shows in the past infused by his knowledge around, the concept of halacha and extraplanetary colonization. Rabbi Pinchas Taylor brings wisdom that is both secular and religious. He's based here in the U.S. He's a best-selling author and lecturer. He's spoken across the globe, though, in a wide variety of venues. Some of his books include Pillars of Faith and A Jewish Guide to the Mysterious. They're great works of insight and scholarship in the spiritual realm, and I mentioned kind of the esoteric, mystical side. Rabbi Taylor has also been called a celebrity life coach for his work with actors and athletes and other public figures. He's founded The Ark, which is a successful faith-based study and coaching program. He's a certified cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner. He also brings a psychoanalytic understanding. He's a certified clinical trauma specialist, and he's a member of the American Counseling Association, the Association for Conflict Resolution. He's also director of the American Faith Coalition. He's got a very impressive bio. He's formerly a member of the governor of Florida's Faith Advisory Board, and he contributes on a number of national news outlets, and we're lucky to have him tonight. Rabbi Taylor, welcome back to Equal Footing.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be back with you.
Rabbi Taylor, let's start with you. There's, I think, I don't know if it's a deep understanding whether it reflects true Jewish theology or not, but I think many of us growing up in the Jewish tradition, of course, we know we're in the Parshas right now, the weekly readings of the Torah right now. We're talking about the really in the world of dreams. Last week's Parsha, we learned about Joseph's imprisonment, and then there's the dreams that he has around kind of out in the field with his brothers, and then in this week's Parsha we're hearing about the Pharaoh's dreams, the 7 fat cows, and so forth. We're all brought up with this in Hebrew school, and it seems like dreams are really important, Rabbi. You've got over 700 mentions in Torah about dreams, not to mention discussions in Talmud about it and so forth. And yet, when we're doing the pregame research for the show, including some of your own commentary, it seems that we're kind of discouraged as Jews to read too much into dreams. Maybe that was something, dreams are more important way back when. Now, in our modern reality, we're supposed to look at it as Jews from a more psychoanalytic perspective. Rabbi, help us out here. What's the right way, so to speak, as an observant Jew to think about your dreams?
So I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Dreams are certainly given significance. Like, as you mentioned, we find multiple references in the Hebrew Bible itself, throughout the Talmud, throughout the mystical texts. Dreams play an important role. In a certain degree, they're akin to prophecy. God can reveal the different secrets about the future, or secrets about life in the conduit of dreams. Dreams, in fact, in the Talmud are called 1/60th of a prophecy. And so, again, there is certainly powerful energy that is contained in a dream. On the other hand, we in our times are spiritually a lot less spiritual matters. That's just part of the devolution, if you will, throughout the generations. Every generation is slightly more devolved spiritually than our predecessors. And being that that's the case, dreams, our sensitivity to picking up on, to understanding the meaning in dreams from a prophetic standpoint are a bit more limited. In fact, many of the dreams that we have, because we're so overexposed to so much outside stimuli, whether it's advertisements, whether it's scrolling through your smartphone, whatever example you want to use from our modern world, so many bits of information are contained within our brains, enter into our brains throughout the day, that it's very likely that whatever we're dreaming about has something to do with something that we saw, heard, smelled, whatever, throughout the course of the day, much more than in prior generations. And so, again, I'm not saying it's impossible that a dream can have tremendous, significant, prophetic, spiritual meaning these days, but it turns the likelihood to much smaller degree than it would be in prior generations.
Yeah, that Talmudic saying of a dream is like 1/60th of a prophecy doesn't exactly make it seem like the dream's that important. You need another 59 parts to get to a prophecy. So I'm going to ask you both somewhat kind of a question to get a bit of a rise, and I want you to try to answer yes or no if you can. So, Rabbi, if you're someone who's living a Jewish life, in however you define that, that's an important part of the fabric of your being, and you're aspiring to be a more faithful or observant Jew, whatever that path looks like for you. You have a dream. We all know what this feels like. You wake up, and hopefully you have those moments where you remember clearly your dream. And in those moments, it feels profound. It feels like there was a message there. Maybe it was a painful message. Maybe it was something that made you feel uplifted. You know how we wake up sometimes, we can feel ecstatic or we can feel very down based on what's going on in our dream. But this time it just feels important. And you are naturally inclined to infuse meaning to it. Now, should you or should you not, Rabbi, now go to your mashgiach or your rabbi, your spiritual mentor, and try to get into it? Should you try to spend some time interpreting that dream? Yes or no?
If we're talking about for prophetic value, I'd say no. If there are things that are inspiring to you and going to make you, kind of galvanize you to do the next good thing, I would say, feel free to explore that. I want to be clear that I'm not saying that dreams don't carry significance and meaning today, as far as our own personal development, understanding ourselves more, understanding what emotions we may be trying to process during our waking hours. Those are very useful tools and something that we can explore and can kind of go into even nowadays. I'm simply saying that the spiritual or prophetic value today is a bit less than it's been in prior generations. So yes, if we're talking about there's no dictate.
You wouldn't say like, okay, you should put in the tefillin today. You had this profound dream. You should talk to a rabbi about it. It's not of any significance. You can, you cannot. There's no spiritual mandate.
Correct. I would say nowadays the thing that the utilization that we can have of dreams at most is to try to understand ourselves psychologically, emotionally, in a better way. And that is sort of, and even our spiritual level maybe can be assessed if we're dreaming about certain things. We can say if you think during the day that you're all high, holy, and mighty, and then you dream about certain things that are not so high, holy, and mighty, it may be a wake-up call in your spiritual life to say, hey, you may not be as high, holy, and mighty as you might think.
Dr. Cutler, that's a good segue, that last comment, because it leads to kind of the insecurities and those bugaboos that are in our subconscious that seem to come out in our dreams. I'm going to ask you also the yes or no question. But this time it's not necessarily working with someone who's religiously observant or aspiring to be a better Jew, so to speak, but just someone that that perhaps is open to therapy, and they are aspiring to understand themselves better. They're aspiring to do whatever inner work, and however they define it. Now, same situation. They wake up. They're powerfully impacted by a dream. They're either feeling inspired or in some way disturbed, and they remember it vividly. Is it important in your kind of objective or clinical view to see a therapist about that, or to see a dream interpreted, if that's the right way to say it?
So, a couple things. One is, I think all dreams, whether they seem big dreams or regular dreams, or maybe even a dream that you feel like didn't mean much of anything, have an opportunity to allow the dreamer to delve more deeply into their unconscious and what's going on for them and their reactions. So I think all dreams are important. Some people are more interested in dreams than others. I have had people come to me, not my patients, who have a specific dream that's a big dream that they want to talk about, and I will work on that with them. But I think the most useful way to think about using your dreams to understand yourself better really has to do with an ongoing exploration of your dreams in one form or another. First of all, write them down because they disappear pretty quickly when you don't. Second of all, think about them, in terms of the specific images and what they may mean to you. And then also think about what's going on in your life in the day or days leading up to the dream, because all of that is relevant information. I think that my patients who do bring dreams regularly, we work on them together, and they get a lot of richness in terms of self-understanding, anchoring themselves in terms of what's going on for them internally at the moment and how it relates to things from their past, because dreams have that ability to very easily link current issues with past experiences and issues.
And we're going to need to take our first break, but I'd like to challenge you both to think about in your practices, so to speak, whether it's as a spiritual guide, a life coach, a therapist, to give us some examples, because I'm sure there are a bunch of people listening who are thinking of dreams that they remember, have written down, and wondering if there are archetypes there. There are things they should be looking for. I know, Rabbi, there's in Talmud, there's commentary about certain things that can appear in dreams that can be quote-unquote good or bad, like olives, for example, are considered good, and owls are considered bad. Stuff like that, so we can start to, make it a little bit more real in our own lived experience. Our number to participate, again, either by text or WhatsApp, please don't call this number just for tonight only. We'll be back for live callers next week, is 917-428-4062. That's 917-428-4062. And we'll be right back on this show on dream interpretation.
Now here I go again, I see crystal vision. I keep my visions to myself.
Some weeks we have challenges tying in music to topics. Not this week. A lot of songs about dreams and the meaning of dreams and the anxieties that sometimes are expressed in our dreams. So this show has been supported for years, and there's been other support in the network by a wonderful sponsor called Manhattan Medical. Manhattan Medical believes, as we do, that the tough stuff deserves talking about, deserves shining a light on. That's how you solve problems, not by running away from the issues. Manhattan Medical, in particular, works with people in the community and outside on erectile dysfunction. You heard me right, ED. It isn't something to be ashamed about. It affects nearly 2/3 of men in their lifetimes. It's something often to be tackled as a couple. And there are solutions out there that don't involve those expensive pills that a lot of people can't take because of side effects or comorbidities. And Manhattan Medical has a different way to solve ED. It's a new, I say new, it's been around in Europe for some time and in Canada, relatively new to the U.S., FDA approved. It's a therapy called GainsWave. That's Manhattan Medical's therapy for erectile dysfunction. It is non-invasive. It's surgery-free. It is painless. Nothing to be ashamed about. Give them a call. Check it out. If you mention that you heard about Manhattan Medical's ED treatment on this program on Equal Footing, the Dove Husband radio show, you will get a free consultation. That's a $250 value, and you do not have to be in Manhattan or the New York area, anywhere nearby. Anywhere in the United States, you can do this with a teleconsult. Here's the number. Write it down. 888-ED-CURE-9. That's 888-332-8739. One more time, the number from Manhattan Medical's no side effects, terrific results, GainsWave therapy for ED, 888-ED-CURE-9 or 888-332-8739.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on check. And I've been taught, but I'm keeping on.
All right, you're back on Equal Footing here with Rabbi Pinchas Taylor and Dr. Ann Cutler, experts in the area of dream analysis. I promised at the outset of the program we would give a brief background to this, and I'll keep it very brief, but there is nothing new about us as human beings putting a ton of importance, interpretive importance, prophetic importance, spiritual importance, mental health importance into dreams. This goes back many thousands of years to the ancient Sumerians and the Babylonians, all the way through, of course, ancient Egypt, where there were literally priests who had the job of being only dream interpreters for the pharaohs and other high leaders. We know that from our own Bible and sacred texts and the stories that we discuss about right now in the section of Torah that we're reading. All the way through the Greek and the Roman era, you have dream interpreters accompany even military leaders into battle and telling them whether to hew left or right. You have traditions in the Muslim tradition, in the Chinese tradition, a lot of stuff going on in the Middle Ages around dream interpretation. You had even, Van Gogh, for example. Many artists have and continue to, and historically have attributed their inspiration to dreams. I'm not sure if I'm going to get the quote exactly right, but Van Gogh said something to the effect of that he dreamt of his paintings and then painted his dreams. Was kind of his method of inspiration. Now, you get to the beginning of the Victorian era, the industrial age, and the importance of dreams outside of the religious world diminishes very substantially. In fact, in the medical community, and here I might get corrected by both of my thousand times more learned guests, but as I understand it, in the medical community by the early 19th century, dreams were really associated simply with anxiety, even household noises in the night, even indigestion. So when Sigmund Freud publishes Interpretation of Dreams in 1899, there was really a change from the trend at the time. And there we have a revival of the importance of dreams and a whole system for interpreting dreams. And with that brings us up to kind of the current debate that we're talking about here. Do Jewish theological perspectives and modern psychoanalytic perspectives on the importance of dreams differ? Are they symbiotic? That's the question. So, Rabbi Taylor, what is an example of a dream that would be today something you might want to kind of think about in the context of your spiritual life? Are there archetypes from your perspective in that kind of sphere?
Yeah, I think there are archetypes, and I think the greatest amount of wisdom that we can get is really from the emotional psychological side, as we were mentioning. It's Freud. He writes in on the interpretation of dreams that he considers himself to be like a modern day version of Joseph, and many of his gleanings came actually from a book by a Rabbi Yosef Almoli in Pitron HaChalomot, which is a book about the interpretation of dreams. It's a fairly mystical work that goes through different symbolisms of what means what, and it's available, something that's available today to find. But as far as archetypes are concerned, I think that, again, on an emotional level, we can learn quite a bit. So some of the dream studies that have gone on throughout the decades, and Dr. Cutler, I'm sure, can elaborate on this in greater detail. But for example, you have folks like Calvin Hall, who spent decades researching dreams and found that people from all backgrounds pretty much dream about the same types of things. I mean, there's different people and different ways that it plays out in your dreams, but the theme of the dream is very, very similar. And for example, like the most important, not the most important, the most common dream or nightmare, as it might be, is that you're being chased. And you can never really run away very fast from whatever it is that's chasing you, whether it's a monster, whether it's a person, whether it's an emotion, a feeling. And that, I believe, has symbolic meaning in our lives. We feel like we're being chased by something. Sometimes we feel like we're being chased from ourselves, and one of the reasons you can never really truly run away from it is because you can never run away from yourself. You have to face what you're going through. You have to face what it is that is challenging you. You can't run away from it. These are certain archetypes. The idea of falling, another very common dream, falling or drowning. The person in their waking life may feel overwhelmed. and vice versa. My favorite dream, the flying dream, I always kind of hope for that dream at night, where you discover that you have this ability to just sort of fly, that may be showing that in your waking life that you have sort of the opposite thing going on. Not that you're drowning or overwhelmed, that you feel elated, even spiritual, that things are kind of going your way and you just feel like uplifted. And so that expresses itself in the dream world in this particular way. So a lot of the common dreams that we have certainly carry with them archetypal value and certain things that we can learn from an emotional, psychological, even spiritual perspective about ourselves from them.
So let me pause there and ask you, Dr. Cutler, is there kind of in modern psychoanalysis, kind of a dream dictionary? If you're listening, some of these things that Rabbi Taylor mentioned, or other recurring dreams you have, could you think if I dream of X, it means Y? Like, does a certain thing that you dream of represent something? Flying, does it represent ambition? Does the house represent your mind? That type of thing? Or is that not a useful way to think about it?
That's for me, this question? Sorry.
For Dr. Cutler.
Sorry.
So the way I would answer that, a couple of ways I would answer that. One is that dream language relies heavily on metaphor. So visual metaphors, verbal metaphors, and that we, especially within a similar culture, but also somewhat universally, we share a lot of metaphors with each other. So flying as sort of freedom it's a metaphor that a lot of us kind of commonly relate to. So that's one of the reasons why dreams can be easily understood across people, especially within the same culture. And I would say that in the dream group that was developed by Montague Ullman, the process relies heavily on the fact that we all do have these commonalities. So in this group setting, a group of people get together, and in each session, the group works together on one member's dream, and through a series of steps to interpret that dream. And so there's a lot of back and forth with group members taking the dream as their own and talking about what they feel in the dream, and then that resonates back and forth with the actual dreamer, so that there is this kind of connectivity that occurs. Some things land perfectly, some things are a little bit off, depending on each person's experience. But you do get a sense of the way in which we're all connected, and we're also connected oftentimes in our dreams. And I'll just give a very brief example from a recent group was, this very common experience that we're all attending to right now in the world, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And one of the group members presented a dream, who happens to be Israeli, presented a dream which dealt with what's going on there. And everybody in the group was able to, we're all attending to the news, we're all involved in what's going on. But it's a mix of Jewish and non-Jewish people in the group. Everybody was able to relate to the elements of the dream that had to do with that conflict in a very significant and helpful way.
So we're going to have to take our next break in a sec, but to that, Dr. Cutler, to that last point, is every dream meaningful? I mean, my understanding, with a very passing understanding of Freud's view, is that every dream is meaningful, no matter how nonsensical it seems or how little of it we remember. I'm not sure if that's still a prevailing view, your view, or prevailing view in psychoanalysis. Are certain dreams simply like random byproducts of our brain functioning, or are all dreams meaningful in some way in your view?
I would believe, and I think this is a psychoanalytic understanding is that all dreams are meaningful. Some dreams are more available for surface meaning. In other words, the surface in the manifest dream, which is the dream as you remember it, has very obvious messages for the dreamer. Some are much more deeply buried in metaphorical language and harder to pull the meaning out of, which often indicates that the dreamer is a little bit more conflicted about dealing with whatever's in that dream. They're disguising it more than a dream that's about something that's not so fraught. But I believe that all dreams are meaningful.
And Rabbi Taylor, you bring an interesting angle, right? Because you bring a psychoanalytic perspective and also a theological perspective. In that sense, as you blend the two, do you think every dream is meaningful, or are some to be discarded entirely?
I think a lot from a strictly Torah vantage point. I would say that a lot of dreams do not have prophetic meaning. Again, could they at the same time have psychological meaning? Could they be something that is used to understand ourselves? Perhaps. But as far as a prophetic value, I would say the answer is no. And again, I would say that because of the fact that we are on the receiving end of so much more stimuli than our brains can even take at this point. That oftentimes these days, like if you'll have a dream of an owl, you mentioned like Talmudic, if you have a dream of an owl, it's much more that you saw an owl in your Instagram feed than that you sort of dreamed it up out of nowhere or some from the inner recesses of your subconscious. That's my understanding of dreams nowadays from a Judaic perspective.
Oh, that's a little bit depressing. I was enjoying learning part of the program about this very esoteric commentary on dreams from a Jewish wisdom or theology perspective, and to think that it was maybe just something that I saw on my Instagram feed kind of bums me out. We'll be right back. We're here with Rabbi Pinchas Taylor and Dr. Ann Cutler talking about the meaningfulness of dreams, how to interpret them. I want to get a little bit more into that after the break and get to a couple of listeners' comments. One more time, the number to text or WhatsApp in a comment or question to our esteemed guest is 917-428-4062, and we'll be right back.
The storm that gathers near, listen to the wise
Equal Footing with Dove Tusman is sponsored by MDCS Dermatology, your experts in skincare. With 2 Manhattan locations and 4 offices in Long Island, including Plainview and Commack, the dermatologists and skincare surgeons at MDCS are proud to be affiliated with the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and New York Presbyterian Hospital. So schedule your next skin exam in one of MDCS's convenient New York area locations. To make an appointment, go to www.mdcs.live or call 212-661-DERM. That's 212-661-3376. You can even schedule a virtual video visit with MDCS's board-certified dermatologists from the comfort and safety of your own home. So go to www.mdcs.live or call 212-661-3376. And don't forget to mention Equal Footing for 15% off all cosmetic procedures.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to. I've been taught, but I'm keeping on to.
You know, in several ancient traditions, there's evidence in ancient China, in the ancient Sumerian tradition, and in more recent cultures, Native American traditions, that there was significant debate about what was more important in reality, the waking world or the dream world, in terms of meaningfulness and, in fact, our development as human beings. And the Chinese philosopher Shuangzi put it this way: I dreamed I was a butterfly flitting around in the sky, and then I awoke. Now I wonder, am I a man who dreamt of being a butterfly, or am I a butterfly dreaming that I am a man? And it sounds, it's lyrical and it's interesting today, but it seems silly, especially in the context of your last comment about the owl and the Instagram feed, Rabbi Taylor. I'm wondering, do we now is it now a certainty that our dream world is just nowhere near as important as our waking world? I'm not so sure, and I'm not so sure all of our listeners would agree with that. Dr. Cutler, what do you say?
So my thought about that example of the owl in the Instagram feed is that it's true, obviously, that we're all bombarded with more images and messages throughout our day, but I don't think that the extra imagery or the randomness leads to a sense of dream selection, of images being random in and of itself. That, in fact, if you think about it, you're getting puppies and kittens and owls and like all kinds of things bombarding you on Instagram on a daily basis. But if you pick an owl, you've picked an owl. So there is a reason why it's the owl and not the kitten.
Yeah, I mentioned before the break that I found it a little depressing to kind of relegate dreams to the random or unimportant. There's a Rabbi Cutler. Rabbi Taylor. There's a rabbi you may know, Rabbi Ner David, the last name, that has written quite a bit on this, and their argument is that this is a forgotten spiritual practice in Judaism, and that we're doing ourselves a disservice as Jews not to focus more on our dreams, that it's very clear in Torah and our subsequent sacred texts that the dream world is extremely important to our spiritual evolution and understanding, and that in a sense there's a degree of intellectual laziness that we simply kind of apply to some extent. I mean, no offense to it, but a modern psychoanalytic framework to it, and now categorize dream analysis kind of in that realm, in a clinical realm or scientific realm. What do you say to Rabbi Ner David, who writes on this topic?
Well, I can't speak to him specifically. I'm not familiar with his specific work, and I do want to be clear, by the way, that I agree with everything that Dr. Cutler said about the owl and the Instagram feed. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm talking about the spiritual prophetic value, not the psychoanalytical value. And there's always something we can learn about ourselves by what we dream about and what we choose to sort of what our mind is filtering through when we are in the dream world. I'm talking about the prophetic angle, the spiritual angle, the way in which God would communicate with people, or one of the mechanisms that God would use to communicate with people. But as far as the general concept that you mentioned, that it's due to our just intellectual laziness, I mean, I don't think that that's the case at all. There's a premise in Judaism that our spiritual abilities go down generation by generation. That's why a modern rabbi can't just say, well, I disagree with the Talmud and I have my own views on things, because that's a silly notion. They're so much greater spiritually and so much more connected to the source chronologically, that their spiritual capacity is much greater. I would say, by the way, that it is possible that our dreams can have meaning if a person is also willing to uplift themselves spiritually. In other words, if you take on practices that, for example, as a Jew, that are going to enhance your spiritual sensitivity, enhance your spiritual your spiritual awareness, then those can be conduits that are more likely to open up in the spiritual degree. Because if you make yourself into a vessel that can now process these things, and you become worthy of having insight into the interpretations, and that your clarity is maintained when you are having these dreams, then that's a possibility as well. I'm simply saying that the vast majority of people, in the vast majority of cases, the dreams that they have value psychologically, emotionally, but not spiritually.
Right. Would you guys both agree that a first step in this journey of dream interpretation and looking at it, the importance in your life, whether it's psychological or spiritual, is to record immediately when you wake up as much as you can?
I would agree with that in the sense that even the most dramatic and memorable seeming dreams upon awakening will often just completely disappear. You can have the experience of waking up with a very rich dream and thinking, "Oh, well, I won't forget this dream." But two things happen. You go into your day, and all the things that you have to do that day, and then also the unconscious will often pull the dream back down into the unconscious, so that it's coming up from the unconscious.
What's going on? Sorry, Dr. Cutler, what's going on when such an extraordinary, vivid memory, we all know how that feels, would disappear so quickly? What's happening brain chemistry-wise when we just forget our dream?
Well, I can't answer in terms of the brain chemistry. I think more psychoanalytically what's happening is that you're shifting from sleep and dreaming mode into a waking mode, which are very different experiences. When you're asleep and dreaming, you're essentially cut off from the rest of the world. So you're just having a communication with yourself while you're dreaming, and you've left off all the sort of social niceties and ways in which we interact with people in our life, and the way we become sort of less fully ourselves in a lot of settings, or less fully honest with ourselves and others in social settings. And so those two states are antithetical in some ways to each other. So the dream can easily disappear once you're in that new state, that awakening.
Right, there's no other reference point. Like we often we remember conversations or visuals based on a reference of where we were at that time, who we were speaking to. That makes a lot of sense to me. Rabbi, I know we're going to lose you after this next break, and we've got a couple of really good listener questions. One is written in such a way that we've never gotten before, so I like it. It's a two-part. So Tevi wants to know, first, Rabbi, if when you get, as a Jew, if you get a letter in the mail, should you read it? Rabbi, are you there?
I'm there. If you get a letter in the mail, should you read it?
That's Tevi's first question for you. It's a two-parter.
Is this like a setup because the Talmud says that a dream that hasn't been interpreted is like a letter that hasn't been opened?
Tevi, you got one-upped by the rabbi. Yes.
I'm just,
Yes, with Talmudic sage Rabbi Hista says a dream uninterpreted is like a letter not read. The implication being that we should definitely read the letters. What do you make of that? What do you respond to Tevi?
I would say Tevi is absolutely right. In Talmudic times, when that statement was written, absolutely, the people were up to spiritual caliber, that they were receiving regularly spiritual messages and prophecy, or akin to prophecy, in their dreams. I would say nowadays, due to both things that have been discussed. Number one, the evolution of our spiritual caliber over the generations, and secondly, the bombardment of outside stimuli, that the chances of having something spiritual in our dream become much more diminished. And so to be fearful of things, here's one interesting tactic. A lot of the Gedolei Yisrael of our times, everyone from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to the Chazon Ish, if a person had a dream about something that was very traumatic, a death of somebody, something that ordinarily in prior generations a person might fast for, because of out of dread that such a thing would actually come true. That on the first hand, they were told in this generation not to really like to kind of disregard it because, again, our dreams today are more or less typically not of spiritual or prophetic value. But then they said if you are really worried, then when the Shliach Tzibur, when the person leading the prayer service gets to the Birkat Kohanim and the repetition of the Amidah, that you should think that your dream is going to be annulled, and that would be that would actually annul any negative outcomes that could possibly be. And again, if it was actually meant to have prophetic value and have a foreboding message about the future, this would cancel it out.
Interesting. I struggle, Rabbi. It's a topic for probably another show, but we often have heard the arguments on this show that something esoteric about our tradition, in this case dream interpretation, is somehow fundamentally different today than it was eons ago because we're less spiritually inclined or because of the modern context of our lives. And I got to tell you, that's one that I struggle with. I've always struggled with. Before we lose you, I want to get what I think is another interesting comment from a listener. It may be tongue-in-cheek, I'm not sure. But Ellie asks you whether the Jungian view of dream interpretation is more consistent with Jewish belief because it involves archetypes and symbology much more than the Freudian view. And that would be a good segue after the break to get more into the psychoanalytic side. But what do you think? What do you say to Ellie? Has he got a point there?
I think it might be fair to say that the style of Freud is more similar to the Talmudic style, where in the end of the volume of Brachos, where there's pages and pages dedicated to interpreting various objects or circumstances or people or animals or whatever that you find in your dream as having specific meaning and interpretation for the future. The Jungian style of archetypes perhaps might be more similar to today's value that's gleaned from dreams, which is more archetypal, which is more self-assessment that we can, I think as Dr. Cutler alluded to as well, sometimes where you can identify something that either you're struggling with in your waking life or would perhaps wish you could do in your waking life. For example, in your waking life you would love to scream at your boss, but you don't scream at your boss because that's not something that would go over very well. But you may have a dream about screaming at your boss because your mind has to find some way to express that would be done in a healthy way that wouldn't result in you being jobless. And so I would say, Ellie, it's a fair question. It's a fair question. I think it might be fair to answer that the Freudian style is similar to Talmudic interpretation, where the Jungian style is more similar to the value that we can glean from it now, which is more psychological than prophetic.
Got it. We'll be right back on Equal Footing. We're here with Rabbi Pinchas Taylor, who I know you're going to probably need to jet. We may not have you at the end of the show here, Rabbi, and Dr. Ann Cutler. We've got a couple of really great listener questions for you, Dr. Cutler. We'll be right back on Equal Footing.
I wish you were me. I wish I was you. Don't you wake up. This dream will come true. And everything has a name.
Equal Footing has been brought to you in part for some time by Mechanical Art Capital. Mechanical Art Capital offers 2-day financing to watch collectors and watch dealers from around the world. Yes, you can get your money in maximum 2 days, often overnight. It does not involve getting a loan. It's halakhically sound. It's done through a purchase and buyback structure on your inventory or your collection. Unlock the cash value of your watch collection or your watch inventory by contacting Mechanical Art Capital. You can do so very easily by downloading their app on your smartphone, either an iPhone or an Android device. Put in 3 words, mechanical, space art, space capital, and you download some pictures and videos of your watches. You get a financing offer within a few hours. You can have your money the next day. You can also go to their website, mechanicalartcapital.com. www.drmtologist.com.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to. And I've been told.
I'm delighted to hear that Rabbi Taylor, you may be able to join us to the end of the program. I want to get to a couple of these listeners' questions. They're always better than mine. One question has to do with something I brought up earlier with I think about Dr. Cutler and a lot in the context of dreams. I struggle to remember, as I think many people do, the details of dreams. I do sometimes write them down, pick up my phone next to the bed and try to remember what I can. But I remember the feeling, and I remember certain characters in the dream. And so this listener doesn't, there's no name here. It's a phone number, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to say your gender, listener, because I don't know it, is asking, when you wake up and you feel incredible love for someone, or on the opposite side, you feel incredible hate for someone, and you know you dreamed about them, but you don't know exactly what it is that was in your dream, what do you do from there? Is there meaning? Should you call the person that you dreamt about and you're feeling good and warm and fuzzy about? Should you try to write something or solve something with the person that you're feeling hateful towards? And they go on. Dr. Cutler, this was something I was going to ask as well. I sometimes feel like it's prophetic that, like, I feel like there was meaning in that I thought of this person. Should I contact them? What do you say to this listener?
So I think that I would separate how you think about the dream from whether and how you're going to act on the dream in your waking life. And I think that even getting a fragment or a feeling is useful from a dream, because it's indicative of something that was, happening for you in your sleep that night. And if it's a positive feeling of love for somebody, I would first just think about where that's coming from. So you can do a little self-exploration to see why this person this night? Why am I thinking about this person this night, dreaming about them? And why is it such a positive dream? Or if it was negative, why is it such a hateful dream? And then you can decide separately, if you understand a little bit better, or reflect a little bit more, you can decide separately whether you want to reach out to that person and tell them about it or talk to them about it. I think that's a separate action that would be better decided if you really have a little bit of reflection on why you're having that dream or what it means to you.
Yeah, and so that leads to another listener question, Rick, who asks, who's getting at the issue of formulaic interpretation of dreams. And he asks, can artificial intelligence be used to interpret dreams? Because it seems like we're talking about somewhat programmatic stuff here. That's fascinating to me. Is there kind of, could you feed into a computer the images that are important, the feelings that are important, the chronology that's important in a dream, and kind of spit out through an AI app the meaning of our dream, Dr. Cutler, or is it very subjective in your experience in working with patients?
I really hate that idea, but I'm not really big on AI anyway. But I think my understanding of AI is that you could feed it into an AI and spit back something that would be basically a dream dictionary kind of response. So there are dream dictionaries that exist, and they're very formulaic. It's like this image means this thing, and so. But I think you lose a lot of the personal meaning of the dream by doing something like that, and I think that it's much more useful to either reflect on it yourself or talk it through with a therapist or talk it through in a dream group or some other way of getting to what it really means to you, because I don't think a computer can tell you that.
I love that this listener is listening real time and writes in a note that says, with due respect, there should be more research done on this because these large language models of AI are actually not programmatic. They're based on existing knowledge that is ingested. If you get enough existing knowledge on the patient, you can probably actually have something be meaningful through AI, which could be a tremendous tool for psychoanalytic. So, okay, another listener question to both of you, and there are actually 2 listeners have written on this topic about manipulation, and that there's a desire to get their dreams interpreted more, but there's a fear that it's very easily manipulable either by a spiritual guide or a therapist, because it's so much in the prism of the person that's analyzing. Rabbi Taylor, does this resonate for you? Is that one of the reasons why perhaps you're discouraging, in a certain sense, from people on the spiritual path from putting too much stock in their dreams?
I don't foresee. Listen, I think I don't know that dreams per se have any more degree of manipulation available to a mentor or a therapist that the person might be working with. A mentor is someone that you go to that you trust to guide you based on the knowledge that you're providing them and asking for advice, and a therapist in a similar way as well, that this is someone that you trust. This is someone that you're hoping is not going to manipulate you. So whether you're sharing what's on your heart in your waking life or sharing what's on your heart in your dreaming life, I'm not sure that dreams have more are more open to manipulation. I'd be interested to hear what Dr. Cutler has to say about that. But from where I'm standing as a more spiritual guide, I don't see it having sort of more of a more susceptibility, let's say, to manipulation.
Dr. Cutler, what do you think?
So I would never, as a patient or a person telling a dream to somebody, I would never take, if the person that you're telling it to or the therapist says, "Oh, your dream means this," and gives an interpretation right up front, could be very skewed. I think that when I work with patients with dreams or in the dream group, there's a whole process of trying to help the person talk through the imagery in the dream and what each element means to them, and helping them think about, maybe pointing out, well, this happened and then this happened. What do you think about that sequence of things, or something to get them closer and closer to their own responses upon wakening to the dream that they're presented from their sleeping state. And that's how you can get past, I think, any kind of somebody else overlaying on the idea onto you of what your dream means.
Interesting. Guys, we're coming up on time. I'm going to ask you very briefly to play a little advocacy. One of you will play devil's advocate. And on the one hand, give the importance, exhort our listeners and why to spend more time focusing on their dream world, and maybe the other to discourage them from it. And maybe a little bit more difficult for you, Rabbi, given some of the things you said in the program, but what would be a stance of truth that you could have in conveying to our listeners to spend more time focused on their dream world?
Sure. So, listen, dreams are something that inherently give us a sense of spirituality, even if the actual meaning from a prophetic standpoint today doesn't stand in the same way that it once was. There are certain gleanings we can get spiritually from our dreams. For example, the dream world is sort of like living in a spiritual world, in the sense that in the spiritual world there's no time and space. And in the dream world, you're also not confined by time and place. You can wake up in your childhood home and walk outside, and all of a sudden you're in your current home, or you're outside the door in Australia somewhere.
I like that. We're gonna be up on time. I just want to give pardon the interruption, Dr. Cutler. I know it's probably tough, but devil's advocate. Why should folks focus less on their dream world?
I don't think I can make that argument.
Fair enough. I agree with you. This is how we did the program. We'll put in the show notes how to get in touch with Dr. Ann Cutler and Rabbi Pinchas Taylor. Thank you so much.